In botany, succulent plants are the ones with parts that are thickened, fleshy, and engorged, usually to retain water in arid climates or soil conditions. In botanical terminology, cacti are succulents, but not the reverse, as many succulent plants are not cacti. Native to deserts and dry regions of the Americas, cacti are succulents with a water-storing body and vestigial leaves, which are spines. Cacti are amazing. They withstand temperatures upward of 100 degrees Fahrenheit and below freezing, and they don't disintegrate under ultraviolet rays. Cacti gain their popularity in horticulture because of their versatility. While many types of cactus are native to desert climates, most will tolerate a number of growing conditions. Cacti vary in size, color, shape, and growing habits. They may grow in upright columns, spreading clumps, or spiny balls. They might even be found cascading over large rocks or in hanging baskets. Cacti are available in numerous varieties too, many of which produce stunning flowers. Do your research before you settle on your design. There are copious amounts of pictures and information about them online. One of the websites with pictures is succulentsunshine.com. In this video, I will demonstrate how to build several varieties of succulents using the pinching technique. Pinching is a simple technique to learn and can be adapted to suit a variety of processes. Many artists use pinching alongside other construction methods. Small pinched vessels can be easily combined to create a form that is hollow, an approach often used when building small figures. There's no rule about the succulent itself. Use your imagination and find ways to mimic or invent your plan. However, there are some steps you should follow when combining two pinch pods together. First, the diameter of attached pods should be very similar. Second, the attachment of both pods should be very secure. And finally, you need to pierce a hole in enclosed form, otherwise it will explode as the air tries to escape during the firing. Here I have two pinch pods, and their rims are very similar in diameter. I let them dry a little to a soft leather-hard state before I try to attach the two together. Then I mark the area of the attachment. The walls of both pods are pretty thin, so to ensure a secure connection, I use a coil of fresh clay between the two to expand the surface area of attachment. I score and sleeve both pods at the area of the attachment, then lay a fresh coil in between them and gently press both parts together. One of the reasons you need to let your pieces dry to leather hard so you can press them together without collapsing the form when you manipulate it. The fresh clay will be squeezed out. Get rid of the excess clay and smooth it out, pushing it into crevices between the two forms. Now your form is completely enclosed. Do not forget to pierce a hole or two in your form so it does not explode during firing. You can find a hidden spot somewhere between the two forms. To make a flower, make several clay spheres of the same size, flatten them, and layer them in a row. Then simply roll the whole row into a tube. The top of the tube will be formed into a flower. Score, slip, and attach. When you are attaching something that you cannot press together very well, twist it several times to make sure all the air bubbles come out. Let it dry to bone dry and paint it. You see me using a squeeze bottle with a thin applicator, which allows for thin and precise lines. I'm going to make a different potted succulent from start and give you a refresher on how to make a pinch pot. Prepare your piece of clay by rounding off all the corners. Make sure it is pretty smooth and round before you start. If you start with a piece of clay that is not perfectly round, the walls and the rim of your pot will end up uneven. Put your thumb in the middle and push in to make a hole, being careful not to go all the way through. Start at the base and gently pinch the clay with your fingertips and the pad of your thumb. Rotate the pot in your hand or on the table as you raise the clay walls. Pinch pot has a tendency to flare out. That is because you are increasing the surface area as you pinch. If you want the walls of your pot to go straight or inward, make sure to squeeze the clay together as you pinch. This action reduces the lateral surface area of your pot and instead directs it upward. You can enhance the texture of pinch marks and make it more deliberate if you wish. I'm going to make another pot, so it can dry a bit while I'm working on the plant itself. It's good to make several pots at the same time so you can choose which one you like best. With this one, I allow the walls to flare, but I curve the rim inward using pinch and squeeze technique. While the clay is soft, you can imprint any texture on it. I'm thinking to make some prickly pear type cactus for this planter, so I need some surface area over the pot to make it look like dirt from which the cactus emerges. I will make another pinch pot and attach it to the inside wall of the planter. I attach the top pinch pot while it is still wet, so I can stretch it to fit the diameter of the planter. I make a hole in the middle so I can manipulate it from the inside. Remember to support the wall on the opposite side as you press on it. You can texturize the surface to give it more interest. The planter now can dry to leather hard while I'm working on another succulent. I think the taller planter will house a nice tubular succulent and can overhang the rim. It is really easy to make a tube out of clay. Making tubes is a very useful skill and can be used for making spouts, some handles, feet, for vessels or sculptures, pipes, etc. To make a tube, roll a coil of clay and then insert a wooden dowel or a pencil into it. Pull the clay off the dowel in a twisting motion. Observe the plant you want to make and try to pick up some of its special characteristics, such as texture and form of each element. Sometimes it is easier to break something into its constituent parts, but sometimes it is easier to generalize it into one or several shapes. In this case of tubular succulent, I decide to make tubes of different sizes and attach them together. I keep attaching them in bunches or singles till I close the gap and the plant looks full. I scratch and slip the wall of the planter first, and then I scratch and slip sides of tubes to attach more and more tubes. One important thing to remember is that the air cannot be trapped inside any hollow form, no matter how small. Keep this in mind as you squash tubes together. Make sure you don't pinch the tube in two different places, since this will create a pocket of enclosed air. If you think you might have trapped some air, pierce a small vent hole. To save time, you can make bunches of tubes and attach a bunch at a time. When you are designing your succulent, think about how you're going to transport it to the kiln. If you have to transport your work to the kiln by car, which is the case most of the time, you need to think ahead, because bone-drying clay is super fragile. If your work has many protruding parts, it is likely to break in transport, so it is best to move it while it is at leather-hard state and dry it at the location of the kiln. Keep your work well wrapped in plastic to prevent it from drying. If you must transport greenware with protruding parts at bone-dry state, consider transporting it in a box filled with loose packing material, such as peanuts, wood shavings, or shredded newspaper. Place your work inside the box and then pour your packing material around it till the work is secured in place. Give the box a gentle juggle to see if the pottery moves. If it does, you need to add more packing material. I'm going to work on my prickly pear cactus next. The prickly pear, or its scientific name, a puncha plant, has thick, flat, oval, and modified stems that look like paddles. To make one of those paddle stems, start with a pinch pot and see if you can pinch an elongated sphere. Remember that the clay wants to flare out, so you need to squeeze and pinch to bring walls of the pinch pot inward as the clay stretches. Once you stretch the clay, you can cut some triangles out from the rim and push the wall closer together, the technique called darting. If this is difficult, you might want to consider making a sphere from two pinch pots put together. When you have the form of the paddle ready, indent some grooves in its wall to mimic the texture of the cactus. Then cut the base of the paddle at an angle so it is flush with the surface of the potting soil. Score, slip, and attach. Blend the seam between two forms with a blending stick. Anything with a rounded tip can function as a blending stick. Repeat this process till you achieve the shape of the cactus you want. One thing to remember is to make a hole in each enclosed space so you don't trap any air. If you don't remember whether or not you cut out the hole, make sure to poke a venting hole from the outside. You can hide the venting hole in a cactus flower. Oopsies! Let's analyze what happened here and how to prevent it. Since the walls of each petal are pretty thin, there's not enough surface area for a secure connection, meaning not enough clay is grabbing onto each other for two sides to hold together. I can fix it by placing a small coil of fresh clay right into the seam and blend it onto both attaching pieces. So I score and slip again, then attach, and place the coil of fresh clay into the seam. When I press the coil into the seam, I want to make sure all the air is squeezed out from the seam. So I push into the seam as well as blend this fresh coil onto both attached parts. Use your fingers or the blending stick to blend soft clay. To make sure the connection is secure, gently tug onto one of the pieces and see if it comes undone. If it does, you either need to add more soft clay into the seam, or you need to detach the whole thing and start again from scoring, slipping, and inserting the coil into the seam. You see me attaching a prickly pear to the top of the petal. I will hide the venting hole inside the prickly pear. It is really important to make sure there is no enclosed space anywhere throughout your piece. If the air is trapped, the area will explode during firing. You can further texturize the surface using slip trailing technique. There's a number of commercial tools for slip trailing with various applicators. For a simple trailer, you can try a condiment dispenser or a plastic bag with a cut-off tip. It is very similar to cake decorating. Before creating a design, practice using the trailer on a slab of leather-hard clay. Get a feel for how the slip comes out and what kinds of lines you can make with it. Spend time playing with different hand motions. If you are used to a brush, using the trailer will feel a bit awkward at first. It takes practice to squeeze with the right pressure and move your hand at a steady pace to get a smooth line. After a number of tries, you may decide that the applicator or the hole in the slip bag is too big or too small for your hand. If that's the case, find one that's comfortable to use or have a new bag with a different size hole. Here you see me using a Ziploc bag, which I fill with slip. I then cut the corner of the bag and try out the thickness of the squeeze line. To make cactus spines with a slip trailer, I dispense slip slowly in one place till I see a bead formed. Then I pull the applicator away from that bead in a fast straight motion. To make spines all over the cactus will take some time. Okay, one more succulent. This time I have some specific feet I want for the planter. I would like to find the planter form that looks good with this feet. The feet are made of slip-casted clay, which I casted in my own mold I once made from a seal's vertebrae I found on the beach. I'm going to try some forms to see what looks good. It also depends what kind of plant you have in mind. All three segments should really work together: the feet, the planter, and the overall form of the plant. I have a succulent in mind that has a spiral pattern and stays low to the ground. It is interesting to consider that a lot of succulents do not grow random like a tree or weed. Many of them grow in specific geometric patterns. I think low and wide planter will work great for my spiral plant, because it will fill the pot and will not overhang much. It will be set like a stone in a ring setting. To begin working on the plant itself, I make a stem so I can attach leaves around it. Later, I can manipulate the stem or just get rid of it altogether, but for now, I need it to build the plant. First, I make the center. I roll out a bunch of clay balls of the same size, then I roll a bunch of a slightly bigger size. Take 5 or 7 small clay balls and flatten them. Then arrange them in a line by overlapping 1/3 of the previous one. Pick up the line and roll it in your hand. The flower pattern will be created. Score and slip the base of the flower and the stem and attach them together. Now I can work on larger leaves. I pinch flat each piece of clay and texture one side of it to mimic spines. Then I attach the leaf and blend it onto the stem. The next leaf will go onto the stem overlapping the leaf before, etc. I use 4 or 5 pieces of the same size and then switch to the bigger pieces, so my plant grows in size. The size of clay pieces changes, but the principle is the same till the very end. To prevent the leaves from deforming, do not lay the plant on the table, but rather insert its stem into a cup while you are working on leaves.